Now that we have learned what is eugenics and what is its aim and principles and what actually it aims at, let us learn like what is the need of applying this concept of eugenics to the society or to the gene pool. Now there are two things that describes why there is what is the need for these eugenics. This eugenics is needed because that results in the best development with good heredity and good environment, and it aims at increasing the normal and gifted population, whereas it discourages it suppresses the flow of deficient and abnormal genes in the society. Now that we know that we would like to have more of good genes in the gene pool, and so we need to promote that, and we do not want any kind of defective genes or the defective germplasm or bad characters in the society. So we'll try to suppress it by applying this laws of genetics or the laws of eugenics or the science of eugenics, right? Now there are in present day scenario, in the present society, there are two alarming factors concerned which needs this application of science of eugenics. Now if you ask me what are these two alarming factors, one is there is a declining birth rate among normal and superior people. That means to say the persons who are having the best quality germplasm. So what they are doing, they read well, they focus mainly more on their career, they want to get well settled with their careers, they earn more, and then they'll think of getting married, and then they will have limited number of children. Thereby their birth rate among these individuals who are having superior genes in them is declining, right? At the same time, there is a relative rapid increase of abnormal and defective genes into the society. And how does this happen? People who do not have very good characters or very good genes in them, they tend to reproduce more, and thereby they'll have more number of children. More number of children means they are contributing more to the gene pool, right? So now what is the quality of the gene pool that has arrived by because of this? There is more of defective genes in the gene pool, so that the quality or the eugenic value, I again repeat, the eugenic value. What does this eugenic value means? The goodness of the genes is reducing in the society, is increasing in the society, but the quality genes are decreasing in the society. So these decline is because of the people with the best germplasm showing lower birth rate, and the increase in this abnormal or the defective genes is because the birth rate of these people with defective germplasm is increasing. So this is quite alarming situation or scenario in the society which needs to be taken care of. Now how do you achieve or how do you work it out at these two criterias? In order to tackle these two, the eugenics, it gives rise to two concepts. One is positive eugenics, which is also called as the constructive method of improving the quality genes in a society. And there is one more concept known as negative eugenics, which is called as restrictive method. We will come back to this and we will come back to this and understand why we call it as restrictive method and what are its attributes. First, let's focus on this positive eugenics or the constructive method. Now, this positive eugenics mainly speaks about how you can improve the quality of genes in a gene pool. What are the measures that you can take in order to improvise the quality of genes in a gene pool? Under this, the first one includes early marriage of those with desirable genes. Like as I previously told here, now if you consider a person who is, physically fit, mentally active, intellectually better, and is doing good, he wants to settle down in his career, he wants to earn more and more, and then comes its priority of getting married and having children. And even if people get married at the right age, they tend to delay having children because they want to settle, they're more focused on their careers. In doing so, what happens? The vigor of their germ plasms will come down. As a result, they may not, or the children who are born will not be of that good character. So their germ plasm will become weak. So in order to avoid that, we should encourage early marriage. Early means not as early as before getting settled down. It means that you get settled down at the right age. You should get married and have children at the right time, so that all the goodness in your genes are inherited and you give rise to or you contribute more of the positive genes to the gene pool. Next is subsidizing the fit. And one more point to add on here, if you see in the society, now late marriages have become a trend. Like people would like to get married at the age of 35, 40, or it depends on what their priorities are. So those kind of things should be discouraged. Now the next aspect is subsidizing the fit. This also has the same relation with the previous point that we discussed. Here what happens, once a person is well educated and well settled, they limit their number of children that they have. So this has a kind of dragging effect on the society, because they have the best germplasm, they have more positive genes in them. That means they should be contributing more to the gene pool by having more number of children. But on the contrary, what they do, they tend to limit the number of children to 1 or 2, and thereby the flow of these good genes in the society will get restricted. And H.J. Muller here suggested one more concept in order to prevent the suppressiveness of the best germplasm. They said it's not only that these people with the good eugenic value should be encouraged to have more and more children, but also they should contribute their germplasm so that it can be stored. And then came the concept of this sperm bank and egg bank. Here what they do, they tend to store the germplasm of the persons who are having good quality genes, and this can be preserved for several years, and people who need it can take the sperm or the ova from these banks and they can have a children. Now this has become quite common even in Indian society. You can see that many celebrities are having children without getting married. So they may contribute one of the gamete, but the other one comes from the sperm or the egg bank, and there they may choose which germplasm is having what all good characters, and based on that they can choose a particular gamete from the bank. So it is something like you choosing a book based on its content. So it's as simple as that, and this was proposed by Muller, and he said the very positive germplasm should not go waste. They should have more number of children, and they are encouraged to store their germplasm in terms of sperm bank and the egg bank. Then comes the education. Education is very important, wherein it is through this education that you are telling people what is right and what is wrong, and what are their responsibility of being a responsible citizen of the country. For example, now that you all know what is the science behind eugenics and how this eugenics can affect the future of the society or the gene pool, and I'm sure you will give a second thought when you come to the stage of marriage, definitely you will think twice before choosing a person, like what is its credibility, how intellectual he is, or how well settled he is, and then you can take a decision. Even in our ancient Indian tradition, in our Indian tradition also this concept existed, but it was not put in words in terms of eugenics. As you all know, if any marriage is to happen in your houses, first thing they will say is the girl or the boy should be from a good family. Now, what do they mean when they say good family? The family with good characters, the family which has a inheritance of good genes in them. So obviously that particular person will also inherit the same, and once you get married, you are again contributing to the good genes to the society. This is the science behind that, so we all need to respect it. So in that case, education plays a very important role, and that teaches you should be knowing what is the concept of marriage, and when once you have children, you have more responsibility towards them. You have to give them good conditions to live, to educate, and thereby you are trying to be more responsible towards the society, right? So all these things comes only when you are educated. Then the next one is to avoid germinal waste. That is, as I said, some fragment of the society, like for example some priests or nuns or some group of individuals, they are not allowed to get married, which means that their germ plasm is going for a waste. So we should not have any kind of these kind of restrictions and promote more of propagation of good genes in the society. Then genetic counseling, this plays a very important role, wherein the counselor is the one who mainly explains to a couple, especially if they have any history of genetic disorders. The counselor can explain to them what are the risks of having this mutation in their genes and how risky it is going to be, and they are going to weigh out the risk and the aftermaths of having such kind of children, and how burden it will be for a parent and to the society to have that child, and so on. So they play a very important role in convincing a couple regarding the regarding whether to have a defective child or not. Now the next one is improving environmental conditions. Here environmental conditions, we mean providing a child with good nutrition, good environment to study, and to give them the best opportunities to learn and groom into a good individual, so that they also in turn contribute more to the positive genes of the gene pool. Then the next one comes promotion of genetic research, because even as of now we have many questions to be answered. We have no clues regarding what these genetic disorders are, or how it can be curtailed, and how to control, so there should be more of encouragement given to this research, wherein it involves the genetic disorders and its inheritance. So when we follow all this, we will tend to, by doing all this, what we are trying to do, we are trying to improve the propagation of best germ plasm into the society, so that there is more of positive genes contributed to the society, and because of this we call it as a positive eugenics or constructive method. Fine. Now next we will learn about, or we'll see what is this negative eugenics. Now negative eugenics is also called as restrictive method. Now what we are trying to do here, we are trying to restrict the flow of abnormal or defective genes into the gene pool, so that there is no contribution of defective genes into the gene pool. We want to have a gene pool with high eugenic value. So in order to achieve that, we are trying to suppress or restrict the flow of negative genes into the society. And where you can apply all this, all these are applied to the individuals who do not have a good germ plasm, right? And by now we already know what is good germplasm or good character. Now the first method here which is employed is sexual separation of the defective. Now here defective means any person who is having any abnormal kind of genes, or if he has any genetic disorders, he has color blindness or hemophilia or any kind of abnormal or mutated genes in him, and he should be sexually separated so that he should not participate in the process of reproduction and again give rise to the same kind of negative genes into the gene pool. So that is what we are trying to aim at this. Next is sterilization. Now this is a process wherein you tend to restrict the birth rate of an individual by doing the sterilization methods, which is applicable for both male and the female. And in our country also there was a movement of this sterilization, and that is in order to restrict the uncontrollable population, and as a whole it a kind becomes like a euthanic value rather than having more of eugenic value. So this is one method by which a person can be prevented from undergoing this process of reproduction. Next is control of immigration. You know what is immigration? Movement of people from outside towards a particular region. Now some developed countries, they have very strict immigration rules. Now why would they do it? Because they just don't want any of the individual just to come into their society and get married to their individual and contribute their genes into their gene pool. Thereby what happens? You never know the quality of a person who is coming into your country or your state or into your region. So you don't know what kind of good genes he has and what kind of defective genes he has. So he just comes in and get mingled with the population, and he's contributing more for the harmful gene or the negative genes into the gene pool. So in order to prevent these kind of entry of negative genes into the gene pool, we have to have a very strict rules pertaining to immigration. The only one who is intellect, who has good characters in him, who has got good hereditary traits, only they should be allowed to get into the country so that they will not decrease the value of our gene pool. So there should be stricter norms to control this process of immigration. Now next comes the regulation of marriage. Regulation of marriage is something like, you know, what you see in the society now, like when two people are trying to get married. Now earlier was the times where they used to look at what kind of a person he or she is, and based on their family inheritance they used to make a match and people used to get married. Now of late what has happened, irrespective of a person, a boy or a girl, anybody it could be, whether they are good in their characters, have they studied, or you know how good they are, they do not consider all this much. If they have money, if they are financially doing good, they'll get married. Then what will happen? What kind of children they are going to bear, what kind of genetic load they are putting into the gene pool, you never know. So these kind of marriages should be regulated. It doesn't mean that those who have more money are all bad. No, I'm not telling that. When you get into this process of marriage, these marriages should be regulated in the sense, what they are trying to say here is, when two instances are there, when somebody is very intellect, he does not have money because of so many conditions that he has come up. On the contrary, the other one is too rich, but he does not have good qualities in him. In these two cases, this person who is having high intellectual character should be preferred than the one who is having less of intellectual character. Here again, intellect means the good genes. There are many characters which are attached to it, not only the intelligence. So he who has less intellectual or less amount of good genes with more money should not be considered, and this fellow who is having good characters in him and with no money should be promoted, so that the marriage between these two individuals will contribute, or it will give rise to more of good genes to the society. That is what regulation of marriages mean. Okay, so these are certain rules of these eugenics which can be applied onto the society or in a society, so that you restrict the entry of defective or abnormal genes into the gene pool, right? So I hope you have understood the whole concept of what we have discussed today. We have said what is eugenics and why is it helpful in the society and how it's been defined. And we know that there are two ways of controlling or improvising the quality of the gene pool in a society. One is with the help, one way is to improve the existing race, the other one is to improve the future generations. And when you are trying to improve the existing race, eugenics come into effect. When you are trying to improve the future generations, eugenics will come into effect. And eugenics is something which was given by A.C. Pye, which aims at improving or putting the correction to the already syndromic individuals, those who are suffering from inborn error of metabolism. And the main drawback of this is this tends to add to the genetic load, and it weakens the human species because it promotes the flow of harmful or the mutated gene into the society or into the gene pool. Then you learned like what are the main aims of eugenics and why is it, what is the main principle behind this eugenics, and you learned why there is a need for eugenics or the principles of eugenics to be applied onto the society. Then we learned about what are the two alarming factors of the society in the present scenario, and we also learned like how these two things can be tackled by applying the positive eugenics or the constructive method or certain rules of eugenics to promote more of positive genes in the gene pool, and on the other hand a negative eugenics or restrictive method wherein you try to restrict the flow of abnormal or defective genes into the gene pool so that you can maintain a good eugenic value of the gene pool. So I hope you all enjoyed this lecture, and if you have any doubts you can come back to me and we can discuss further. Thank you.